Hello and welcome back to day 2 of the Claim Your Confidence Challenge. I'm so excited that you're here and I can't wait to dive in and really get our teeth wet. Yeah, I think that's the phrase. Um, so just a reminder, I really want to encourage you to share your progress and how you're completing the assignments in the Motivate Her Facebook group. That space is there for you, it's there for me, to be there for you, so it's there for us, but really it's there for you. Okay, it's a really safe place filled with incredible people, and it's made even more incredible because you're there. So please let that be a place for you to really share what you're working on and showcase yourself. So today we're going to talk a little bit about imposter syndrome, as that is truly linked to pushing past perfectionism. Okay, so imposter syndrome. I'll admit I didn't really know what that was until I was in graduate school. And personally, I started having these overwhelming feelings that I had somehow faked it all through high school and all through college. And that teachers just like gave me passing grades because they liked me. Now, I'm sure that if a teacher or a professor has a fondness to you, maybe they will invest more time in, if you need it, tutoring you or kind of giving you opportunities. But I also worked very hard. And so I don't know what exactly happened for me personally between undergrad and graduate school, but through most of my graduate school, and I had no idea what the name of it was, and I thought I was crazy. I was like, why do I feel this way? But I felt it like it was real, that I just was faking it. And then I read one article that an acquaintance of mine shared, and it told me what imposter syndrome was. And I took a breath because at least I knew what it was called, and I knew that I actually did have some control over it, and that actually was much more common than I thought. And also, when I was in grad school, of course, not telling anybody I was feeling this way, that didn't help. But as soon as I started sharing, I found out most of the people I went to school with, who some of which were already doctors and already nurses, they also felt that way, which did help me. So, imposter syndrome. This is sometimes really quantified through just experiencing phoniness, maybe feeling that you aren't intelligent or you're not capable or you're not creative, despite having evidence that would prove otherwise. So, imposter syndrome, sometimes it can sound like a really big and scary term, but it's really just used to describe the psychological pattern where an individual may be experiencing self-doubt and doubting their accomplishments, in fearing that they might be exposed as a fraud or as someone who somehow doesn't belong. So one of the ways to cope with imposter syndrome is really coming to terms with the fact that you did earn your accomplishments, okay? And know that if you struggle with perfectionism, there's probably a part of you that has experienced feelings of imposter syndrome, feeling like you aren't really supposed to be doing the job that you're doing, or that you're not really as good as everybody around you is telling you. One of the signs is that you can have difficulty accepting praise. It might be challenging for you to accept compliments. I'll tell you though, me personally, that is not a problem I had. It's not one I have, but I do see that quite a lot with individuals. They have really a lot of trouble internalizing their success. Another kind of telltale sign of imposter syndrome that is connected with this pursuit of perfectionism, as it were, is discounting your successes. As I said earlier, because this is a really tried and true running theme, and attributing it to something else. And like I said, that's what I was doing. Like all that hard work, the hours lost of sleep, the time and energy put in researching whatever it was I was working on, I literally was discounting all of that and saying, well, it's just because I was likable and didn't make a fuss. And that's why the teachers just gave me A's, which is definitely not the case. Another thing to be aware of is you might just be an overworker, but kind of to a fault, and that's to your fault. Just working tirelessly over and over and over again, putting in more than enough energy and effort into a project, and kind of reaching a point where anybody else would stop and you are just, there's no stopping for you. Like you would be working on something up until the absolute last minute, and not because you started it late, but because you're constantly finding a reason to add more and make it better. It's very difficult to walk away from a project that you're working on. Something else, and so all of these things really do tie into each other. So that working kind of right up until the last minute, or like thinking of a change that you want to make. For example, I would save final drafts of essays. I did this all the way through graduate school. It's like final draft 1, final draft 1, 2, final draft 2, seriously final draft, absolutely final draft. So then I would have 20 versions of my paper all labeled with these different, final draft titles, because I would have changed one sentence, but I wanted to know what the original version of my final draft was so I could always go back. Did I ever go back? No. And I will say that this really had to stop when I submitted my thesis, because my professor who I was submitting my thesis to, she told all of the students, she said, I know what you all do. I wish she had addressed imposter syndrome, but all she said was, I know that all of you save like final draft 1, final draft 2, absolute final draft. She goes, well, I think that's insanity. So you can only send me one draft. And whatever you send me, that's what your grade will be based on. That's what basically your entire graduate career is on. So make sure that you send me your ultimate final super deluxe draft. So let me tell you, as I was saving all my drafts, I was very clear with myself about like which one was the newest version. Anyway, this does tie into internal compulsion to feel like you have to be the best. For example, if you're a straight A student in like grade school, and then a straight A student in high school, and then maybe a straight A student in college, or not. I want to be clear that imposter syndrome can present itself at different stages of life, and it can also present itself when grades are not a quantifying factor. Imposter syndrome can present itself when we're looking for a job, when we're currently in a job. It can present in relationships. So I'm just kind of following this logic train through from a school perspective, because that's sometimes the easiest way that this can be understandable or digestible, because we've all had grades, so we kind of get that mentality. I just wanted to clear that up. So again, you can be a high achieving student, and then you get to a point and you start questioning all of the grades. Like I said, one leads into the other, because you did want to be the best. You had this internal, like, I want to be the best person out there. I want to be the best person. I want to know that I'm the top of the list. Now, personally, again, I do want to, or I did when grades were a part of my life, really want to be I wanted to be one of the best. I don't think I needed to be the smartest person in the class. Not that grades are a true indicator of intelligence, but we're not covering that in confidence claiming. But then when I got to graduate school, the thing of it is, the school that I went to, everybody who went there, and we did all kind of suss each other up, we all got A's constantly. That was just, we were very used to that. So I went from being someone who was generally at the kind of highest grade earning out of my friend group, out of the people I associated with, to suddenly now I'm in this group of people. All of us came from that stock, every single person. And it did feel, how do you set yourself up as the best if you're around other people who are all the best. So I think that also played a little part. I had to find other ways to kind of break free of the best grades being my defining characteristic. Another thing that can come in is that when you have imposter syndrome, even aspects of it, people do tend to describe you as a perfectionist. You won't stop until it's perfect, or it's never perfect. Remember, this goes back to working on a project literally minutes before it's due. And I will tell you, I have made changes to projects 5 minutes beforehand. Why? What was what huge change did I make? I have no idea, but it would be eating at me like, oh wait, I'm going to make this quick change. I don't do that anymore because it just breeds so much stress and anxiety, which another kind of sign to look out for when you're thinking of imposter syndrome and wondering, do you have that, or does a friend do you have that, or are there aspects of it that are kind of impacting this need for perfectionism? There's a true fear of failure. You know, that quote, like, failure is not an option. This truly is an aspect of imposter syndrome, and not in a kind of encouraging way. It's internalizing failure really can bring people into a tailspin of anxiety and doubt, and put so much pressure on every decision, every move that you make. And just know that, first of all, failure happens, period. It's unavoidable. At some point in your life, you will fail at something. But that kind of pressure and anxiety with perfectionism and imposter syndrome, like, they're all tied in together. So these are just things to be aware of. Additionally, you can sometimes try and avoid showing confidence, which is why I wanted to talk about this, especially on day 2 of our confidence challenge. That when sometimes we're showing our confidence, we feel like that's playing, like, if we were to show our confidence, we'd be faking it. Because there's something inside our head that's telling us, like, well, we don't really deserve to be that confident, because how great are you? And people are just pretending to like you. People are just pretending to, you start creating this really toxic, really negative narrative about everybody in your life. There are things also tied with imposter syndrome where you can potentially really dread being successful. You can feel a lot of anxiety over your success because there's a part of you that feels you're not truly worthy of it. You can even feel guilty about achieving something successful, because you can feel that the more success that you get, you could be driving a wedge between your family and your peers, which is not inherently true. Think about it this way as a quick reframe exercise. What if the more successful you became, the more success you brought to your family and your peers? So the more successful you become, the greater success you bring to those around you. Another thing that is tied in with imposter syndrome and perfectionism is this need, or this really compulsion to compare yourself to others and to compare your struggles to other people's struggles. So feeling like, I shouldn't be worried about this thing because so many other people have it worse than me. And thinking, you know what, the problem is really me. I need to work on me. And if I could just fixating about myself, then all my problems would disappear. And that's not really the case. I'll tell you, one of the most important things to remember is that pain is pain, period. Spending time comparing if the pain you're feeling now is worse or less worse than a pain someone else is feeling, that's really a futile experience, because pain is pain. Work on yourself, work on your pain. Do not spend time comparing what pain is worse. There's no point in that. So another thing is, like, really associating any positive thing that comes to you, any positive success in business, in romance, in your grades, it's all strictly because you're just very charming. You're just a likable person, and good things happen to likable people. Now, there is certainly some truth in that. You can look at the studies yourself about likability and attractiveness, but the reality is looks fade, charm fades, and working hard. And it's almost like, so what? Maybe you are charming, and maybe you are likable, and maybe you are attractive, but those qualities don't negate work that you've put in. Okay. What tends to happen when we start associating any of our successes with like external factors like charm or likability or attractiveness is that it also plays into allowing us to focus on the things that we haven't done. Okay? Thinking that there are so many milestones that I haven't yet achieved. And why didn't I do it this way? And I could have saved money if I'd invested over here. And look at what they have. It's instead of taking time to acknowledge how far you've come and the things that you've built and the things that you've chosen to do, it's all the things that you haven't done, all the things that you should have done. And that just breeds into that feeling of fake success. Like, if you were really successful, you would be more successful than the success that you are at now. If your head's hurting, then that's normal, because I'm literally breaking down imposter syndrome. And the first time it breaks down for you, you're like, wait a second, a lot of these things I'm experiencing. And finally, just the ultimate thing to be conscientious of with imposter syndrome is that you are completely convinced that you're not enough, that no matter what you do, you just are not enough. And it's just a persistent feeling of feeling like a fraud. Again, I'll tell you, when I was in graduate school, I had probably 2 or 3 panic attacks, if you will, related to imposter syndrome feelings. And I remember finally releasing with one of my friends, and an hour before a very big test that we were both taking, I was just in tears, completely beside myself. And I said, I just feel like I shouldn't be here. She said, what are you talking about? I said, I feel like everything I've done, it's not real. And why am I here? There's so many other people who could be here. And like, I just feel like a fake. And I'd never felt that before, but I felt it so strongly. And I don't think she really knew what I was going through, because I didn't even know it was called imposter syndrome. Luckily, I did have a really strong support, and they were able to say, you wouldn't have gotten here just by luck. You are smart. I see you studying. I see you in class. And it helped get me at least out of her apartment and to the test. And I passed the test. I more than passed the test. I more than passed the class. But it was crippling. I mean, I was ready to not go to our test because I truly felt like I had no business being in that class, and that I was just a fraud, and that someone was going to call me out on it. I think that was my biggest fear, that someone was going to stand up and say, like, I know you're not supposed to be here. So I want you to, for a second, think of the word imposter. Now, what words do you associate with that word imposter? Okay, I want you to write that down. Ultimately, the easiest breakdown of imposter syndrome is basically making something look easy, then discounting its value. The cross section of those two, that's where you would find imposter syndrome. Okay, and about 70% of people will experience imposter syndrome or imposter-like feelings at some point in their lives. Yeah, so wish I would have known that when I was experiencing it, because I felt like I was completely alone. But if you're experiencing that or ever have, you certainly are not alone. Some of the things that can be linked to imposter syndrome or have a connection to it: anxiety, depression, perfectionism, excessive self-monitoring, low self-esteem, maybe expectations from family or self, some of the things that you can hear in your brain, or like the thoughts that can come up, is like, I just got lucky. What gives me the right to be here? I feel like a fake. I'm not good enough. I wasn't really cut out for this. It's kind of this all or nothing thinking, which is like someone comes up with a great idea, maybe during a meeting for business or during a team meeting for school, but then you don't really speak up because you have a fear of looking dumb and not knowledgeable. Has that ever happened to you? It has certainly happened to me. I'll try and find ways around that, writing it down like, oh, maybe we could try this, when I know that my idea is so good. Another thought pattern that often comes up with imposter syndrome or perfectionism is just discounting anything positive. And like receiving feedback on a paper or project, and maybe most of the feedback is really positive. One comment can be made on improvement, and we will fixate. I say we because, like I said, I've experienced imposter syndrome and imposter thoughts. You'll fixate on that one note of improvement. And the thing of it is, we always all have improvement. Even if you turn in 100% a paper, if someone else were to look at that paper or look at that project for work, they might find it's not that you did something wrong. It's, oh, this is how you could have done it better, or this is how I would have done it. It's just feedback. Often when we fixate on that one, what we would consider a negative, or what you could consider a negative feedback note, we can be jumping to all kinds of conclusions like, oh my God, my boss hates me. Oh my God, they're going to find out I'm dumb. Oh my God, they're going to find out that I barely know anything. Why am I here? No, 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 no. That's the imposter syndrome talking. That's not something that you should be concerned with, okay? I have heard that one of the ways that we can kind of cope with our imposter syndrome is if we gave it a name or treated it like it was an uninvited guest at a party. And how would you handle that? Because then you can kind of disassociate a tad with what is going on and talk to it as if it's right there. You know, like, no, Becky, you were not invited to this party. No, no, you sent no RSVP, and I did not send you an invitation. Please, please leave. I know this sounds silly, but imagine talking to your imposter syndrome that way, saying, no, you're not invited. You don't get to be here. Go sit outside. I mean, it's worked for me. It is silly, but I tend to like a little bit of silliness in my life, especially when I'm dealing with the heavy stuff. Something else to turn to in working through imposter syndrome and perfectionism is finding your community, which you are a part of, the Motivate Her community. So you wanted to find us, and we're here. We're here to support you and just let you know that we are here to give you all the motivation that you need, and that whatever it is that you're doing, you are supposed to be doing it, and you are worthy, and you have all of the resources available to you within our group, and you deserve what you have gotten in success in your life. Okay. All right. Now, today's day two's assignment is going to be focusing on you picking out your best character traits and your best self. And I'm so excited for you to share all of these in the group. So please share. I can't wait. I'm so excited. And if you have any questions along the way, just let me know, because I am here for you. Remember, you have gotten the success in your life because of the hard work you've put in. Okay, nobody's just giving it to you. You can push past perfectionism because you have a community, you have a team who is here to help you. You have a group who is supporting you. Okay, and know again that 70% of people will experience or feel thoughts of being an imposter, of being a fraud. 70% in their lifetime. So if you ever have that, just know you are not alone. Okay? So now that you've got the tools, I want you to identify your best self character traits and check back in the group because I can't wait to read all about them. All right. I'll see you tomorrow.